Hello there, very special good evening to you and welcome to Mr. Chairman, wherever you are in St. Lucia and in the big wide world. Thank you very much for taking time off to be with us tonight. In St. Lucia, from Grosley in the north to Vieux in the south, those of you on the eastern coastline, our friends in Biku and Denry and elsewhere, those of you on the western coastline, not forgetting Marigot, Jacmel, and the areas in between, Ancillary, Canaries, Suffresh, Wazelle, Labrie, a very special good evening to you. Welcome to our program tonight. Now, on this week's Mr. Chairman, we focus on United and Strong, Inc., a human rights organization that embraces lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues, LGBT, especially in St. Lucia. We discuss some of their challenges and hear amazingly distraught stories about the numbers who've lost their lives while others have been victims of violence because of their lifestyle, and the number of interventions being undertaken to inform and educate the public about LGBT issues. Our guest is Mr. Bennett Charles, Communications and Advocacy Officer. All this and more, plus your calls, of course. So stay tuned until the next 90 minutes or so. Thank you very much. Bennett, thank you very
Good
much for being
evening.
here.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure. I wanted to do this a long time ago. I recall maybe about 2 years ago, I had Kenita, she was here.
Right.
If my memory serves me right, she was not very well that night.
Okay.
I remember she was coughing quite a lot. I even remember there was some sort of interruption for a good few minutes because she was coughing uncontrollably.
Okay.
But we managed to have got
pull it
through.
off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about you.
Bennett Charles, yes. How I got involved in this advocacy work, I should say. I mean, predominantly coming from the community of Fuasha. I always love to tell you I'm from a community that has, I think traditionally when you say you're from the community of Fuasho, or as people say Fulasho, it's always they turn up they turn up their nose at you.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's always seen as a negative community. But so many of us have been from raised up in the community of Fuasho, from Timothy Polio, Earl Busquet, myself, a lot of persons, And so I think really and truly, for me, the path started as a teacher at the George Charles Secondary School, really getting involved in terms of working with young people. And itself, I am what some would say a mama's boy. I'm very close to my mother. And itself, she's taught me to be very different and unique, in the sense of, don't be afraid to say what's on your mind, as opposed to don't just think it. There are times you need to say it at the end of the day. So growing up, studied overseas agricultural science actually. So my background is agricultural science.
That's
but
quite a shift.
Yeah, but I think after
Agricultural
studying
science
yes.
Wow.
I think on return to St. Lucia, I taught at the George Charles Secondary School for a while. And one of the most interesting things at that school, I found it was very difficult to be a male teacher. In the sense I can recall during that time, I taught the sciences at the school. And I gave lessons after school, and the principal then found that there were too many females in the lessons class. And he used to be very uncomfortable with that. Based on maybe past experiences with male teachers. I think male teachers get it very, very hard in St. Lucia. And then I started a club in the school, which was called the UNESCO Clubs, that then UNESCO was really trying to reach into the various schools. And he also had a problem because there were too many young females in the club and itself. So it was very difficult. I can recall even having to go out with a group of students. As a male teacher, you needed a female student. And so it's been difficult. And then even that sense of understanding the backgrounds of students who come to the George Charles Secondary School. I think it was a school that was branded as, the law of the lot going to this school. And so I thought that I could be a lot more impactful outside of the school system and itself. And so my involvement in youth work through the National Youth Council And then my involvement in HIV work in relation to Its Action Foundation, I was introduced to it by...
I remember. That's
Right.
where I remember you.
Right.
Yeah.
Joan Didi really and truly, I think, brought me into the work of HIV and working with marginalized population. I think from then, working with regional organizations, Caribbean HIV and AIDS Alliance, St. Lucia Red Cross for a while as the disaster response officer, doing a lot of work in terms of field work. So I've worked a lot in terms of marginalized population, from sex workers. My last job with the Caribbean HIV and AIDS Alliance, I worked a lot with commercial sex workers, girls who worked in the clubs and girls who worked on the streets, and also with PLHIV, persons who are HIV positive, working with the support group. So I have worked a lot with the, I think, marginalized organizations that represent marginalized people, in the sense that I think it's sometimes we're afraid to do what's different because we fear what persons are going to say, because we behave different or we work with groups that are marginalized. And I think that's
I'm
why
trying to get into your psyche. Why the interest or passion, if I can describe it as that, for marginalized individuals?
Right.
What is driving this?
I think what has been driving it is the fact that going to I went to again one of the supposedly lowest primary schools in the country back then, Marsha Primary. And if you went to Marsha, like, you go to Marsha school, what kind of thing is that? And itself, and being one of the few people saw me as an East Indian, but I'm mixed. One of the few half Indian mixed kids in the school, the smallest for my entire time. Went to Castro's Comprehensive. I was the smallest and the shortest for 5 years in the school. So people automatically thought that it was a point of taking advantage. And so, to me, I always thought that I needed to represent the quiet ones. So I developed my voice very early on. So I was very small, but my voice was very loud. Physically, I learned how to speak very loud very early, from primary school into secondary school.
How did you do that?
I looked at a lot of the preachers. I think I learned a lot from preachers.
The televangelists?
Yeah, the televangelists. I mean, they have
the infamous ones as well?
No. Persons like Martin Luther King, the way he spoke, okay. So a lot of those persons. And very early on, I think even in my NYC days, looking at Rick Wayne and the way Rick Wayne, I think he created a sort of
a buzz
that, he challenged the status quo. He did all the time, no matter who was in government. And I think it sort of added some fuel as to, and being involved in the National Youth Council, we were seen as the radicals, the socialist movement. We would challenge ministers and ask the Prime Minister to resign. So I think this sort of fueled the passion to continue the movement and continue to work with groups which were underrepresented in our St. Lucian society.
It's interesting you mentioned the National Youth Council, because over the last 2 weeks, I've had representatives of the National Youth Council here, and a very inspiring couple last week, Jani Lebon
and Rejan. Yes,
and then the week before, the young man who is seeking the presidency of the National Youth Council, right. and we were discussing some of the issues confronting NYC and so on. Just as an aside, what do you think is wrong with that institution as we speak? Because efforts are obviously being made to get back to the drawing board and rebuild.
Yeah, I think one of the critical problems in the National Youth Council is that, and I think some that happens with governments when they lose elections, or when they get into policy, they forget the grassroots, they forget where they came from.
Forget the people.
Right, and I think that was one of the major issues with National Youth Council over the last 2 to 3 years. They forgot the fact that they were representing young people, and it became these 7 persons in an office in La Panse. It was about us as individuals, and they became disconnected from the very membership. That was one. And I think the second biggest thing is that, and it's something that Ernest Hiller mentioned a long time ago, who was PS of Youth and Sports way back then, and also Armstrong Alexis, who were also stalwarts of the National Youth Council, that the organization needs to revisit its format and its structure. Is the structure of the NYC now relevant in 2017? They need to change that. And I think these 2 major issues, I think, if it's not dealt with very early, NYC will continue being a shell of its former self. And I have spoken to a number of the young persons growing up. Particularly, there's a young lady that inspires me so much when I listen to her, Herma Dimac. She's going up for the PRO. Amazing young lady, just from the way she speaks. She's from the community of Canaries. And I think there's a breath of fresh air from the women who are going up, who are contesting the elections. Dianthea Justin from Castro Southeast. I think she really and truly has, for the last 2 years, have sort of held the organization together, being the current general secretary. Kim Kyle from Castro's North. So I think they're young women, and now Anya Edwin, I think you had her
Yes,
on.
she was with
Right, I mean,
Jeshran.
yeah, a brilliant young lady growing up from the Silver Shadow organization. She's been involved in so much, managing the volunteer groups in St. Lucia. So I feel very comfortable that they're young women. I think because NYC in the past has predominantly been sort of like a boys' club.
Boys' club,
right?
yes.
I mean, Veronica Snack was the first elected female president. And I think she did an amazing job in getting the organization to a certain level. But I think sometimes male egos get in the way. And sometimes we need to understand that we need to allow other persons, both old and young, and with those with fresh ideas and old ideas, to come together and work this. And I think this new team seeking elections to run positions in NYC, it's a mixture of both persons who have been there.
So you've been in touch with some of them?
Yeah.
And offering them advice?
Yeah, we've been having conversations with all of them.
Good.
And
I'm very impressed with the 4 people that we had on over the last 2 weeks. Very impressed.
Yeah. Rejan Preville from Grosile. And the interesting thing is that predominantly, in traditionally, NYC's, I should say, executive members have been from the out districts.
True.
And it's most of it. But you're seeing this new crop of young people emerging who are very much focused on holistic youth development as opposed to just sports. And I think that's what impresses me most about them.
Yeah, that was just as an aside, as I said.
Yes.
So let's focus on United and Strong. How did you come to be? Well, did I ask that question?
Not as yet.
Right. How did you come to be in your current position? How did it was it just pie from the sky? It was just given to you like this,
I wish it was given to me a long time ago.
Yeah.
My involvement with, like I said earlier on, with United and Strong started way back in 2000 when they were really formulating themselves in terms of my capacity working with the National Youth Council. However, in terms of staff, very closely as an educator within the Caribbean HIV and AIDS Alliance, which was a regional project, we started working a lot with United and Strong in terms of the population, the MSM population, predominantly men. We were working predominantly with the MSM population, the young men within the organization. And the position was advertised really and truly that they were looking for an advocacy officer. The organization is really trying to reshape and rebrand its image and itself. I can recall the first time I applied for a job with United and Strong as an outreach officer. I mean, I didn't get the job in itself. And some persons had so many speculations why I didn't get the job. But I think it was not the right time. And so the call came for the position of advocacy officer. And then I applied. I think I was one of maybe 10 or 15 persons applying for the job. And so there are persons out there who really want to work with the organization in terms of capacity of staff. And one of the first questions I was asked by the board, it was the entire board was interviewing me.
Wow. That must have been intimidating.
Was, how do you feel about being the face of an LGBT organization? Very first question. And itself, understanding the fact that the difficulties that persons face, be it your perceived sexual orientation or your real sexual orientation. And so they were very concerned that would I be comfortable speaking on behalf of the organization in itself. And I think my past experiences showed that, speaking on behalf of sex workers and working with persons who are HIV positive and young people, it was not a challenge for me to do that, to openly speak out against issues affecting St. Lucian young people, no matter the sexual orientation, perceived or real. And it's been 2 years plus going on. And during that time, the portfolio of communications officer was added to the advocacy officer. And so the workload increased. And however, I think the impact also on what United and Strong was doing in St. Lucia was becoming a lot wider, and we were developing new relationships and forging relationships both locally and internationally. And since then, I'm there, and I'm hoping as much as possible, as long as the organization requires my assistance, be it as staff or voluntary, I would do my best.
What are some of the challenges that plagues United and Strong?
Definitely, one of the biggest challenges which plagues United and Strong, I think, is one is the political atmosphere. The political atmosphere in terms of
Politics as in partisan politics you're talking about?
in terms of government politics,
Okay.
yeah, government wise in itself, governments will always go and come in itself, but the fact that when I talk about politics in terms of the very ministries themselves, a lot of them don't actually have a clear-cut policy on working with LGBT populations. There is no policy statement on that. I mean, predominantly because there's a legislative issues we're going to talk about, but for example, the Department of Gender does not have a policy on working with LGBT community and itself. The Department of Youth and Sports does not have a policy to, although we did get some work in terms of the review of the National Youth Policy, and they really did get us into that process, and that was really a good thing. But a lot of government departments don't have policies in terms of, okay, we need to engage the LGBT population.
Why do you think that is so?
I think because one
Would you say governments are somehow intimidated by this whole L?
I think governments are afraid to challenge what they believe the communities are against. For example, you would a minister would I would hardly find a minister would stand on a platform and say, I support the work of United and Strong, because that minister's perception is that his constituents or her constituents don't support it, and they're not sure about that. I recall during the last campaign on a particular minister's platform, someone stood on that platform and said that being gay or being heterosexual was as a result of being possessed by demons. Now, when somebody says that on your political platform and you say nothing against it, it means you're endorsing it. And so I have not heard any minister publicly said that they're open to speaking, they're openly support what we do. However, very recently, the Honorable Sarah Flood Boubre has been a bit more open to meeting with us. She's had a few conversations with our board secretary, Jessica St. Rose, and I know we would having few conversations to actually meeting with her. But that's one of the issues. The other issue is really and truly legislative. When you have laws on the books like 132, the Burglary Law and Gross Indecency Act, which focus predominantly, I always say that, in terms of prosecuting people, not prosecuting persons.
More persecution.
Yeah, it's more persecution, and people use it as a cock out. Like, okay, it's illegal. It's on the books in itself, and so it's very easy to use that as a. Because this is why we're not working with them in itself, and so I think some of those issues are very critical. I think the ability of young persons or persons within the LGBT community to access services without feeling some level of resentment from the person providing the service and itself is indeed like major. I mean, you can forego government, you can forego the politicians in certain areas. You don't have to deal with the politicians every day, but the service providers, you can't get away from that. Be it private sector or government sector. When a young person walks into an institution and they don't feel comfortable in being themselves, it creates that problem for you to now, okay, if not this place, where else can I go for assistance? And I think some of those issues, are really and truly the foundation of some of our problems at the end of the day as an organization.
Give us a sense. You've been around, you said, since 2000.
Mm-hmm.
I rather suspect that a lot has occurred in
Mm-hmm.
17 years.
Yes.
What have you noticed most effectively over that cycle? There seems to be, in some ways, a general understanding,
Mm-hmm.
that's my term, and acceptance of people with that kind of orientation.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also the hardening, I think, that there used to be years ago has not entirely disappeared.
Right.
From all indications, is still being felt depending on where you are,
Yes.
what
Definitely where
location
you
that
are.
you are, and how
Yes.
comfortable you are, and how many friends you have around you, and those people who are genuine in demonstrating their friendship with you. Um, in your view, what have you noticed most of all over the 17 years that you've been associated with United and Strong?
One of the critical things, and I'm going to start off in terms of the organization and then delve into more the community and the way the community, in terms of St. Lucia, has behaved. United and Strong started off, I recall one of the first uh, logos was actually a black fist behind a shield. And I recall then Kennedy was really the one pushing the organization, being the face of the organization. Then, and when I joined the organization in terms as a staff, and I was doing some research on in terms of remarketing and rebranding the organization, and they said that during that time, that was around 2005, a young man who would belong to the organization was just murdered, and the organization became very aggressive, and so there was a level of militancy in itself. The logo was changed in 2014 to what it currently is now, with the St. Lucian sort of shaped flag with two hands going up and two figurines going up, which showing some sort of solidarity and working together. And the organization has moved from being militant to being more of a movement, to being an institution in developing more programs and being more focused. So even internally there has been that shift and that change in itself. Nationally, in a sense, there's been a level of greater tolerance of persons who are of a different sexual orientation in itself. I would say predominantly in the north of the island in itself. I think we've done a lot more work. When I talk about the north, predominantly the Grizzly, Castries areas, because you even find a lot of persons tend to gravitate to the north of the island. For whatever reason, more it's maybe touristic. People tend to be more on their own business and not focused on who you are and what you're doing. But the atmosphere is a lot more inviting, and it's up to young persons and persons of the LGBT community. The problem lies when you start going to the other parts of St. Lucia, the rural communities, where I think we have done less work and less education at the end of the day. And so it's a major thing we really have to start working on. But the level of, I think, tolerance towards LGBT persons and even some level of acceptance has really increased. And even policy wise, I recall working with a number of HIV and AIDS initiatives where really and truly it was difficult as a government agency to write in that document MSM, men having sex with men. It was very difficult to write that in a document that a minister is going to look at and say, okay, who are we working with now? We're working with gays in St. Lucia? To now, where you can actually clearly say we're working with commercial sex workers, we're working with MSM, we're working with the LGBT population. So even in terms of how governments have shifted in terms of and I should say ministries have shifted in terms of the work that they do, that has changed also in the sense. So we have seen a shift. However, I think that one of the issues still remains is there's still a big gap in terms of understanding sexuality on the whole. And holistically, people not understanding what it is to be gay, what it is to be a homosexual male or female. And I think people believe that, okay, if you decide to have sex with a woman and you're a man, automatically you're heterosexual. Or if you decide to have sex with a man and you're a man, automatically you are homosexual. So the understanding of what sexuality is and how we express our sexuality, I think there's a big gap in that. Getting down to the grassroots and working with community organizations so they could start having buy-ins and understanding diversity of people. I think these are some of the gaps that still remain.
Advocacy, how do you communicate with people? I know social media is probably a wonderful asset
Right.
for all your goals, undoubtedly so. But other than social media, how do you communicate with that community?
with the LGBT community.
Yes.
Definitely. The
Because you
LGBT.
spoke a while ago about the focus obviously seems to be in the north.
Yes. Yeah.
But when it comes to rural St. Lucia, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
When it comes to
rural
rural
St.
St. Lucia,
Lucia.
it's somewhat a little more difficult.
It's a lot more difficult
Yeah.
to get in there. One of the critical things we've been doing is that you find that the what we say openly gay community members, be it lesbians, young men or whatever.
Would you say that number is a big number? Is a growing number?
I-
The
I-
openly gay, openly
I think
lesbian?
I think persons have become more comfortable with their sexuality. So you're seeing persons who are more open in terms of the way they dress, for them to feel comfortable. So they would dress in a way before, okay, if I'm gay, I would not dress in a certain way because that would be associated with being gay. The most interesting thing is that the way most of our young men dress now, you would think that most of them are gay, because it was very taboo before, first of all, to be a man and dress up in a very tight pants. You couldn't do that. You would assumed
Yeah.
to be gay,
Yeah.
or you would not put a tight fitted shirt unless you were a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But I think the trends in fashion has sort of assisted in people dressing, you know,
It's interesting you mentioned that.
yeah, those things. And so I think more and more young men and women are becoming more comfortable with who they are. I wouldn't say it's only because of United and Strong. I think it's because one, society has become a bit more encompassing of persons and the differences in itself. However, I believe the fact still remains that, one of the ways that the LGBT populations really converse is you find a lot of persons tend to gravitate towards each other. So if you're in a specific community, via social media, via friends sharing information with friends, you would know that, okay, in the community we do have members that converse with each other. They may never meet face to face, but they would converse via social media, or this friend will introduce that person to this friend. So holistically, it's really and truly sort of like sometimes a snowball effect. And itself, ensuring that the network is strong and that people have some level of support no matter where they are on the island, but that level of support exists.
So there is a much better understanding today than there was 17 years ago.
Yeah, definitely
10
in
years
terms
ago.
of and I think among the community members themselves, you have to do a lot of work as an organization. We're doing a lot of work in the members themselves understanding their own sexuality. Because imagine you're a 17, 18-year-old young man. A lot of times sexuality is not black and white. You may believe that, okay, I like girls, so I'm not gay. And it's at one point in time you may start questioning, am I really gay, or am I a bisexual, what it is. So we also have to be doing work in terms of educating a lot of the members themselves on sexuality, and also the position of not being placed in where somebody determines your sexuality for you or tries to sort of.
And that can be quite a challenge when someone determines what your sexuality is.
Based on experiences, even in terms of parenting, and say, okay, you're supposed to like girls. So if you stray away from that, then there's something wrong with you. So education of the members themselves is critical, so they understand, who they are as a sexual being, and that at some point there will be some level of confusion for them, but it's being able to assist them in finding out who they are, be that they're not homosexual, they're not bisexual, they're going through phases, but it's the understanding of that person's sexuality and having conversations with them. You could determine someone's sexual nature.
Speak to the membership of the organization. How strong is it? You say united and strong,
Yes,
so I
yeah.
reckon that you are strong. But in terms of membership,
Yes, the organization is actually, based on its constitution, is a membership organization. In terms of you have to be registered to be a member, and it's from last conversations and last database, looking through the database, it was more than 300, and it's as registered members, and it's now people have to be very careful that not because you're a registered member of United and Strong
does not mean that you
your
are.
sexual orientation is different from the rest of the population. It simply means that you've decided that I want to be a member of this organization despite my sexual orientation in itself. So those are members that you have on paper in a database. However, in terms of voluntary support and persons who work with the organization, that is a lot larger. And it does not stem only from St. Lucia in terms of person we work with voluntarily, but it stems also regionally and on the international sphere.
Do you have social programs where those people feel comfortable to come and chill out and enjoy themselves? Do you do a lot of that?
One of the critical things in terms of we found out in the past was that a big gap was the absence of a space for the organization in itself. For there was once where we've had an office that has been burned down, burglarized. Somebody broke into the office, burnt inside the office.
How long ago was that?
That was
I vaguely heard a story
yeah,
like that
in
some years back.
2000s. Yeah. Then we moved to another location.
Wow, that was in Rosalie?
Yeah, in the north of the island. We moved to another location, and the very same thing happened.
Wow.
And itself.
And no suspicions as to who might have done that?
No, in terms of police reports, the one with the fire, there were so many speculations about the fire incident. I remembered coming in the organization as a staff and still, conversing it with past members and the current executive director, who was Kenita Placid then. And it was just sort of like no idea, a lot of stuff, And the thing is that we needed a place where persons can come and feel comfortable and have conversations and who have issues that you could sit comfortably and have a conversation with somebody who can assist you. So that is critical for us. We have that sort of what we call a safe space where members themselves can just come in and someone just sit down for the day just to feel relaxed at the end of the day. And that's the social programs are meant to assist the members in networking and understanding the various issues that they go through on a daily basis, on a weekly basis in itself. From just social events to just lime and relax. And there events that are very serious in terms of programming and training and developing the capacity of individuals. So we try to develop you as an individual professionally and give you that opportunity also to have fun as a young person or as an older member of the LGBT population.
Who bankrolls you? Do you get a subvention from the government, for example, or
from a personal standpoint, and I'm speaking not as the advocacy officer now, I do hope that United and Strong never accepts a subvention from government. Reason being, a case in point that's just occurring. As much as possible, we have to be very careful about government subventions and the government of the day and what they may decide to do with that. And sometimes you may find yourself in a very rock and a hard place. The National Youth Council has enjoyed a subvention like that, and it happened in 1997 when people claimed a more supportive government was in power, which gave the National Youth Council a subvention. Mm-hmm. Governments have changed and they have not removed that as yet. But I think as an NGO, we have to be very careful that even though government gives us a subvention, we should not remain muted to whatever.
That's true.
And I think for me as an individual, I think United and Strong will always be more comfortable not having a government subvention, because I think sometimes people like you to toe the line because they're giving you a subvention. The funding of the organization comes from international sources and regional sources. Persons who are interested in ensuring that people can live lives free of violence, people can live lives free of discrimination, and people can live lives that way they ensure their own full development. And so international funding is not just handed to you.
You have to earn it.
We have to earn it. And by grinding, and I think Kenita and the team before, you really spent a lot of time, Joan Didier, Veronica Snack, persons who were very much instrumental in forging the organization, Dr. Stephen King, in ensuring that NYC, they worked a lot in NYC in the past, also getting NYC into a certain level. And I think United and Strong has benefited again in terms of as an organization from those persons who had those skills. And so United and Strong have been placed in a position where the capacity of the board members, the capacity of the staff, really and truly is put into full gear to ensure that we access international funding and also funding from regional sources. I mean, currently we're collaborating with government, particularly the Ministry of Health, on ensuring that the Global Fund, which is focused on HIV prevention in St. Lucia, that we're working with them and ensuring that certain programs are carried out and they're carried out in the proper way in the country.
We're going to take our first break, but when we come back, I would like us to focus, and if it's possible, for you to give us some graphic examples of some of what LGBT persons go through.
Sure.
We know that there have been some murders, and many of those persons have been violently attacked.
Yes.
And I'd like us to deal with that. If you can give us some examples of, I mean, I had a friend, Vern, I'll never forget him, whose body was found dumped not far from the Bordelais Correctional Facility. It still shocks me every time I think about it and I come into contact with his family members. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Our first break, you are viewing Mr. Chairman. I'm David Samuels, and I'm here with Bennett Charles, Communications and Advocacy Officer of United and Strong Incorporated. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The Ministry of Health will be undertaking an island-wide survey from April 24th to verify and document St. Lucia's success in eliminating schistosomiasis, otherwise known as bilharzia, a chronic disease caused by parasitic worms which live in certain freshwater snails. This survey targets primary school students within the age group of 8 to 11 years. It is very simple. The survey will obtain a urine sample from students, a few drops of blood through a finger prick, and administering a short questionnaire. All tests will be undertaken by a trained team from the Ministry of Health under the supervision of a registered nurse. Now remember, this is only a survey. St. Lucia currently has no issues with schistosomiasis or bilharzia. However, we need the support of communities, teachers, parents, and their students. Partner with the Ministry of Health and support the survey from April 24th. And help protect the health of this generation and future generations. A message brought to you by the Ministry of Health in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the Pan American Health Organization.
Shante, get out of the ring!
I am not getting out.
Push the hell out already.
Shante! He shut the life in teenager. Shante, why?
I don't want to see you close to my daughter again. Because the boy white you want him to take my daughter like a man? You think I would do that? I love the girl. You love the
would you be mine? Do it.
Nah, lèche moi. I know you don't want to go. But I'm doing it for you, my girl. You have to go. You have to.
Don't tell me. It's love, right?
Yeah, it's just love.
Shante?
Yes!
There's nothing I can do to convince your father to let you stay with me.
You know how I feel about
us.
Love. Sweet love. Wow. The things we do for love.
Hello there, welcome back. I'm David Samuels, Mr. Chairman, and I'm here with Bennett Charles, Communications and Advocacy Officer of United and Strong, Inc. Before I give you the opportunity to talk about, give us some graphic examples, I thought maybe we should give you the opportunity to describe what LGBT means.
Sure.
And if you could categorize each the letter.
Yeah.
You want to do that?
Sure, definitely. The L stands for lesbians, and it's which is predominantly a term used for homosexual female. And it's there are other derogative terms people may say, like a dyke, some of the old terms, but so the G is for gay, which is what is referred to usually as to a male homosexual in itself. So sometimes you may find women say that they're gay also. There's nothing wrong in saying that.
Women actually say that.
Yeah, some women say that I'm gay. And itself, but the terms have been attributed to. The L is for the females, the G is for the males, gay. Bisexual, of course, somebody who has the attraction to both male and female. And itself, not somebody who's necessarily having sex with both, because sexuality is a lot deeper than just having sex. There's an emotional connection, that spiritual connection. So it has a lot more to do with just, okay, I have sex with you, it means that that's my sexual orientation.
So some people may not necessarily be involved in the act.
Right.
But there is this emotional turmoil that is
and
going
that
on.
is your orientation. So your orientation is that it doesn't mean that, for example, you may find persons who say that, yes, I know I'm a homosexual, but I've never had sex with someone of the same sex. It doesn't mean that they're not a homosexual. They have just never engaged in a sexual act with somebody of the same sex. Of course, we have L, G, the B, the T. We have the T, which is transgendered. So a transgendered person, and it's a terminology that's, in terms of some persons find it very difficult to understand what transgender means. So transgender, simply, you have someone who that, for example, the way you think about yourself. For example, let's say, if I would say that I'm a transgendered individual, I may feel one way internally, but the way it's expressed is different. So I may feel like a woman, but the way my physics shows that I'm male. So that's a transgender individual. So the same way you may have a female who everything you see in female, but internally that person feels very male, very masculine. So that's a transgendered person.
Is that big in St. Lucia?
We have not been able to come across a lot of persons who
identify, very small
right, who have
group.
identified with the transgender. You may find that a lot of times for the person to trans, they would go through a lot of other processes. They would take hormones.
Really?
Yeah. For example, so you can start developing breasts if you transition to female. So you may find a young man may start taking birth control pills to ensure that the hormones kick in. You may find that the hips are curving more, the breast is building up. You actually do have hormonal treatment. There are persons who may be able to actually afford the sex reassignment surgery. So they can actually change from the private parts into what they feel like in itself. So there's a lot of work in terms of that aspect. Some persons just simply would take the hormones, or they would simply dress as the sex they feel comfortable.
Hi, caller. I'm surprised we're on the air already. Are you on the air? Would you like to go on? Caller? Tell me I heard something. I heard a sound. No?
No.
Okay.
Yes. So then you have other aspects of the LGBT population, where there's the Q and the I. So some organizations use LGBTQ. So the Q is for queer. Some person may say I'm a queer person. It means that it's not about being lesbian or heterosexual. I engage with everybody, and it's so they don't identify, okay, I'm a lesbian, or I identify I'm gay. I'm queer. And queer was a term used way back then when they would refer to somebody as being gay. So that person is queer. It means that they're different. And you have the I, which is intersex. Somebody who may be born with both genitalias in itself. So they may have actually a vagina in itself with some form of a penis. some persons may have actually have a penis with some form of a vagina or clitoris with ovaries that are not functioning, or you may have women who actually have a full everything, but the ovaries are not active in itself. So this is the spectrum of the gender identities and sexual orientations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just fascinating. So those examples,
Yes.
I can't wait to hear some of those examples that you are going to cite. Murders we've heard over the years. I distinctly recall some of them. I mentioned Vern a
Yeah.
while ago. And there's also the court's employee.
Yes, right. A young
And just
man.
recently there was this young man on the beach
Right, he
who
was
came
in
into
Lebanon.
contact. Give us a sense as what is going on right now as far as those cases are concerned, but more importantly, how does your organization react to when those things occur?
Right.
But more importantly, I would appreciate so much if you could give our viewers a graphic account of some of the most heinous crimes that have been committed against people belonging to the LGBT grouping.
Right. So imagine that your son left home or your daughter left home, and they said they met someone over social media, and they've shared that with their friends. So they're going out on a date with this person, and it's from the LGBT community, and it's because a lot of persons tend to meet via social media or they meet in small circles, and young people. That's generally young people do meet in that area, and the entire evening has passed and you have not seen your son, and this is your only child, your only male child in itself, and the morning comes and you don't see that child. When you discover that your child, his throat has been slit, and the number of stab wounds he has on him, it's just by looking at it, it's basically too numerous to mention, to count. And you try to understand at the end of the day, why would an individual do this to a young person at the end of the day? And when you look for the answers, sometimes there are no answers. And the legal authorities, the judicial system really and truly, first of all, can't find anyone to sort of put that blame on, or to say, okay, there's some level of justice being there. So that's one case that goes unsolved in itself. And the organization is left to have to deal with that parent who keeps on calling just for some level of conversation and a level of, missing her son and just want to have a conversation. That's all as to
A level of closure.
a level of closure. But there's no closure because there's no, okay, well, today we found this sort of thing and we got further information on this. Another case in point, imagine you find another colleague of yours who you just had a conversation with on the beach. I mean, I recall this young man very much. I taught him at George Charles Secondary, courts employee young man. And then you're hearing, the way he's tied up with his laces and the number of stab wounds in itself. And you try to again wrap your head around. You understand? Somebody being killed, somebody being stabbed violently, in some cases molested, and you try to figure out, okay, is it because this person is different at the end of the day? The country goes up. I mean, you hear all the marches and everything when a woman is violated. And I think we need to be of the same when anyone is violated in any form or the other, be it male, be it female, be it child in itself. But we're very sensitive towards women, and I'm very sensitive towards women also. But when a young person or anybody is violated in a manner that is, you try to figure out, was it done by an animal? And these are real cases, which, I mean, we do have photos of these young men, and underneath the photo it says unsolved in itself. At the end of the day, I mean, I know in the past we've had a number of follow-ups with the police on some of the cases, and it's still pending at the end of the day. Very recent one was this young man who was again found in the beach, and the person disappeared. Couldn't find any trace of where the person went to, how they left the country, Did they leave through the airport? Did they leave through the seaport? How that person left the country at the end of the day. And I think sometimes it has left the organization thinking, you know, are police officers or the judiciary, do they really care about what happens to LGBT persons? I'm not saying that they don't, because we have done quite a lot of work in terms of sensitization work with the St. Lucia Police Force. And not only in St. Lucia, but the other countries. And that's been done by United and Strong. And so, because one thing you want to do, you want to make members feel that there is some level of security and safety. And that is always critical when crimes are happening in the country where the murders are being unsolved. People are going to worry, and people may want to start leaving the country. And we've had a number of incidents where persons have left St. Lucia because they've been attacked violently. I can recall a case where somebody broke into this young man's house and literally beat him up in the house. I mean, eventually he left the country. You understand? Imagine a case where, because you're different, that your mother has decided to put you out, and you're going to sleep on the streets, or you're going to sleep in. We've had cases where a lot of the young men have been sleeping in the arcade, in Castries. You know, there's a particular young man there. You know, he was found by some individuals. We were called, and he was sleeping in the arcade. He would wait a certain time in the night and creep in there to sleep, because his mother has decided that. There's another case where a young man, he was put out by his mother's boyfriend because the mother's boyfriend did not agree with the way he walked, the way he spoke. It was too effeminate. You were too girly in itself. Or situations where a young person is beaten up, you know, just for being different. Somebody just bashes a bottle in their face at the end of the day. Or you've driven to the point of committing suicide because the colleagues in your community, and that was a very recent case, the colleagues in the community were giving you jokes about you being too feminine, and close friends of yours. So how do I deal with this as an individual? It's easier to take my life, you know, because it ends everything at the end of the day. These are the realities that every day United and Strong gets a call. A young person who's been
every
put
day.
Out, yeah, they're put out of the house, or they're dealing with some issues of depression, or they really can't speak to someone. I remember a case where a young lady said she approached somebody within an education capacity, and she said that she had problems trying to decide, you know, she knows she likes boys, but she's developing an attraction to girls. And the person tell her, well, you should pray about it. So I'm saying, what if this young person, first of all, they don't go to church, there's no connection with God, you don't know whatever it's a perfect opportunity to have a conversation with this young person about what they're going through at the end of the day. And I think sometimes our own moral issues, whatever issues that we have, gets into the way of reaching people and trying to assist them. And I think that's a big issue. But the reality is that on a daily basis, we've had to deal with situations of mothers who've lost their children through violent crimes, and they still keep contact with us, trying to get some closure, just find out what's going on. Some of the young persons are left on the streets. You know, so some of the young persons, I recall there's a very situation with a young girl who was going for a job interview. And she went for the job interview, and while at the job interview, the interviewer is telling her, if you're coming tomorrow, you need to dress like a girl. So imagine this young lady is walking through town with a pair of heels that she's never worn before, that she had to borrow from her sister, right? And the cat calls from men, and it's like she could have thought that the world would open, and that she would sink in, because that's not who she is. You know, and she deals with that she had to deal with this. And it was very hard for her. So imagine when this young person goes into the work environment, and the work environment is not one that's sensitive at the end of the day. It is difficult for a young person to operate on a daily basis in those conditions. And these are the realities we deal with on a daily basis.
Wow. That is really heart-wrenching. What I'd like to do is to open the lines.
Sure.
The telephone numbers are on the screen, 451 9349 453 1730. If you've got any questions for Mr. Charles, you're quite free to give us a call. One of the things I wish could happen tonight, quite honestly, if we know that there are parents out there or family members out there who have lost a loved one, a loved one who was murdered, perhaps a loved one who has a very hard time coping with his or her sexuality, and they've gone into a depression and that sort of thing. And as a parent, you may wish to share some of your thoughts with us, what it's like as a parent coping with the loss of your loved one. It must be a heart-wrenching situation, and we'll be so grateful if you would take time off to share your thoughts with us about that. 451-9349 453-1730. So if there are any parents listening, and I'm sure there are, some may be contemplating calling, some will not call.
Yeah.
They bear the hurt themselves and they sort of, keep it all to themselves. What advice would you give to those parents and family of the loved ones who have passed on due to violent deaths?
I think one of the critical things is always ensure that, if there's some level of support that you need, that you could reach out to the organization. United and Strong, we always, like I said, we continue in conversation with some of the parents and some of the friends and families, and we're always open to have conversations and help you in terms of, relieving some of that psychological stress that you have on you. It's also important to understand that just being a parent that supports your child, no matter what the orientation was, I think is an amazing thing, is an amazing source of strength. Because it's so hard now being a parent or being someone who is perceived to be different at the end of the day. So when you have a parent who can accept the child for being different, and it's not just about being different in terms of sexual orientation. I mean, I know we have a lot of parents who are struggling with kids who are autistic.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing.
That's coming so common these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot to deal with having children who are different, or society claims they're different and they should not be, part of the St. Lucian society. And we do have a lot of parents who I think we're dealing with it on a daily basis. And they should reach out to those, who they can afford their level of support to. At the end of the day, I think too often, we forget those who have fallen. I think United and Strong has remained vigilant in reminding the St. Lucian public of friends we have lost, colleagues we have lost, and persons who have been still in this day and age being verbally abused, physically abused, violently, even by family members. But we're an organization that keeps, ensuring that we remind the St. Lucian public that as an individual, you have a right to be safe. And you have the right to be safe from violence or any form of discrimination, be it verbal or physical abuse.
When you hear such stories, the St. Lucian has always been described as amiable, lovable type of person. And when you hear stories of how people have been violently attacked and in many cases murdered, it's so horrific.
Yes.
It just shocks you, Let's go to, we have a caller online. Good evening, caller. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You're on the air.
Hello. I'd just like to, kind of congratulate Bennett, and to put it quite literally, it takes a lot of balls to be doing the kind of job that you do. I know, because I've been doing my own advocacy, and you probably would recognize the voice.
Yeah.
We've done a couple of workshops together.
Yes.
one of the things that I think we need to stress in this society is the fact that we shouldn't be tolerant of people, but accepting of their differences.
Right.
The idea, because, and that came up at one of our workshops, seriously, because the idea of tolerance has a sort of a short string towards it.
Right.
There's a time limit. I tolerate you until, and then what happens when it blows up? I accept you for who you are means that I know you are this way and you're not going to change. I accept that. However, that doesn't mean that I have to accept your lifestyle. I have to be indulging or whatever. The second thing I'd like to really bring up is, you mentioned all those incidents, murders, and violent situations that have happened. And it's rather ironic that those sexual situations that I respond, in most of those sexual situations that end up in the death of those young men, that the men were most probably not even killed by people of like persuasion. They are or people who are openly out there.
Right.
So I'm saying, why would you want, and they want to live their lives openly, that's their choice. You want to do your undercover, your choice. Why the aggression, why the need to, I suppose, for fear of discovery?
Wow, interesting
But
point.
is that a reason enough for an individual to lose his or her life? I think in our situation in the island now, we have to do a lot more education. I see young children who want to play with dolls, and their parents are saying, the boys are not supposed to play with the dolls. They're not supposed to do whatever. And then what happens afterwards? Those boys, they go out, they have children with young ladies, and you know what happens? They don't know how to hold them. They don't know how to do whatever. They don't know how to, because they have not had the required practice, the required exercise of how to interact, how to bond with children. It is a well-known fact that as children grow up, their play helps them to practice their roles for later on in life. Why don't we want them to be nurturing? Why don't we want them to be sensitive to other people? I think we create the monsters that we have in our society by our own archaic views, our own probably an insular way of thinking. So I think the education of people and the acceptance towards education of people towards the acceptance of people is a key thing that we need to work for or towards in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and the caller is definitely right. One of the biggest factors. A lot of times we speak about tolerance, but he is correct that tolerance lasts for a certain level, and there are persons that they need to start from tolerance before they get to acceptance, because it's a process. You've been asked to accept something that you've been taught is just not the norm.
Taboo.
Yeah, it's taboo. You're not supposed to do that. And so for some people it's going to be a process of leading from tolerance to acceptance. But critically, I did some work with that individual on gender issues with teachers of kindergarten and primary schools. And it was interesting, predominantly women. I can't recall one male in that class. Because again, the way we shape our men to move away from nurturing jobs more to very masculine jobs and jobs of protection, as opposed to anything that's nurturing or that does not have some level of you rule over the people, we leave it to women to do. And so it was interesting to actually make women understand the issues of nurturing and reshaping the way men are educated in this country at the end of the day. And so definitely that education in terms of breaking down the ways that men are socialized and re-educating our young men to be better fathers, to be more nurturing and accepting of differences, and they don't need to prove their manhood by how many women they sleep with. At the end of the day, I think it's a start to ensuring that we become a more accepting society.
Something he he said there, which sort of got my attention. He was sort of speculating as to what would drive a guy to kill another guy.
Yeah.
And he said something there that really made sense. That the person obviously, for fear of being found out or discovered, so you silence.
Right, for fear of being out, like use the terminology.
That's amazing.
And you know, there's so many reasons that could drive someone. I was talking earlier on that sometimes, and when we talk about some of the interventions we do with the LGBT population, one of the biggest things we've been working on is security and ensuring your safety as a person online in this world where, you know, social media is so used so vastly to hook up people, male and female and whatever it is, but the security level and the way you ensure you do things. And a lot of times social media is used to lure young people into vulnerable positions by people in power, by people out of power.
Could you address parents, this social media? I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that it has its assets, it has its strong points, but
let me give you a prime example.
It's just amazing. You know, not cutting you short, you know what shocks me about social media? I meet a lot of young people from time to time, and it absolutely stuns me how this instrument, the impact that it is having in the St. Lucian society. This is intended to have you open up and socialize.
Yes.
But it's like the person who uses this, a lot of them are in their own virtual space. And like you are in a room with them and they are not communicating with you. Their heads are bowed down into the and like
device.
You do not exist. It's this little space, this little box. It is just unbelievable.
Your presence on social media has become a validation of who you are. That's a big thing. The amount of likes I get on Instagram or I get on social media, on Facebook, the amount of persons I get to listen to me or to watch my pic, it's becoming that this is how I validate who I am as an individual. And it is crazy, but it's a reality. And it's very difficult to disconnect. I was recently doing a session with some young people from the LGBT community on productivity enhancement. And I said, and during the conversation, they were on the phones, and I said, so let's take it. If you walk into your place of employment, and every time your boss turns his back or her back, you're on your phone. Now we understand why the hotels and some industries don't allow you to use the phone. First of all, you're stealing.
Sure.
Right? You're stealing from time, you're stealing, and which means you're being paid for monies that you're not worth, you're not working for. If you're not on social media, it seems like you don't exist. And so these are some of the factors. And what people do now, they use it to lure you into whatever they want. We've had situations where young persons have been lured into false job interviews, and the hotels had to put out a statement on that. Young persons are lured into places they don't know. We've had situations within our own LGBT population where a particular case, he was lured by another partner on social media. You know, that's where they got connected for the first time, saw each other at a date, and it ended up him losing his life. Social media, yes, it is an amazing positive tool, but it's used for malice by the persons who know how to use it.
Yeah.
You understand? I've had a situation, a young lady, she had a friend, they exchanged photos, and I was telling them, when you put those photos on social media, unless you don't find that server somewhere in North America or the Europe, and you go to that server physically and remove your information, it's there.
It's there.
And she and the person had a fallout, and then the person said, okay, you need to start sending me more photos and videos of you masturbating, doing everything, or I will put what you send me out there.
Wow.
And we had to interventions from the vulnerable persons team to deal with that situation in itself. And we've had situations where a particular school, a man went there, he had some kind of thing for another young man, and they exchanged photos. And he went to the school and he was showing the students at the school the other young man's photos. That's what I'm saying. We've had situations recently with the young boys who were coerced into having some form of whatever, I don't want to call it sex, but some form of behavior on social media. We have so many of our young women who are being videotaped in making in pornographic materials. You understand? So there are people who use this for malice. They use it to destroy young people's lives and older person's lives. It's interesting is that there too, you must accept responsibility when you post something on social media.
Precisely.
And we always say that.
A lot of them don't really understand, the dangers of doing so. I think it's almost like they caught it like a wave. They just caught
it's a high.
It's an addiction.
Yes,
it's an addiction.
High. It's a high.
It's an addiction.
And I always tell people, if you're going to post a photo of yourself in your bikini and you're putting it out, it becomes public property a lot of the times because it's shared among so many persons. And so people do also, I recall a friend of mine who went for Carnival Queen, and one of her photos really, when it was taken, it really showed her cleavage, her vaginal cleavage, and persons were making all sorts of comments, and she felt so violated. The good thing is that the company which posted the photo removed it. You understand? But somebody had screenshot that already. I mean, it's very easy to save a photo on Facebook. But she felt violated by the comments persons were making about, her private parts. Innocent photo for a photo shoot during Carnival Queen.
Oh boy.
You understand? And so this is our social media. But what we've been doing a lot in terms of United and Strong to sort of ease the burden of some of the violent crimes which has happened is, one, we've been doing a lot of security training for our members, understanding security online in itself, security in terms of when you're going out with your friends and families, some of the steps you need to take to ensure that you're safe, understanding again the communities that you go in, and sort of the atmosphere in the communities. We do a lot of community education, Mr. Chairman, and one of the things we do is that we know when we go, which communities we go to, who we take with us, how long we spend in those communities in itself, because something can happen at any time.
True.
So we focus a lot on security training for members and for young persons. One of the biggest things we're doing now is reaching out to other groups. So currently one of our biggest projects we're calling is the Red Light Project. So the Red Light Project, too often we hear of women who've been raped.
Do you mind just take a break?
Sure.
And we'll come back to tell us about the Red Light
Project.
Red Light Project. We'll be back to talk about the Red Light Project momentarily. You are viewing Mr. Chairman. I'm David Samuels, and I'm here with Mr. Bennett Charles, Communications and Advocacy Officer of United and Strong Incorporated. The telephone numbers are on the screen. We have just a few more minutes left, and it would be nice to hear from you. Perhaps, as I indicated before, someone out there, you've lost your son, you've lost your daughter, they've died, or they've been violated violently, and you may want to share some of your pain. It's a sort of a therapeutic exercise, and it would be so nice to hear from you if you could find the time. 451-9349, 453-1730. Don't you go away, we'll be right back.
Are you getting the broadband speed that you're paying for? Based on your contract as advertised, several factors may affect broadband speed, like distance from the provider's exchange to your property, the type of line to your house, or processing power of the hardware or device that you are using. To check your speed, you can use a broadband speed checker on the World Wide Web. If it's less than the advertised speed, you may be within your rights to complain to your provider. Always read your contract carefully.
This message is brought to you as a public service announcement by Actel, the NTRC, and this station.
Taste the real Fruta. Enjoy the real Fruta. Refreshing juice of every day. Whoa, Fruta.
Ministry of Health will be undertaking an island-wide survey from April 24th to verify and document St. Lucia's success in eliminating schistosomiasis, otherwise known as bilharzia, a chronic disease caused by parasitic worms which live in certain freshwater snails. This survey targets primary school students within the age group of 8 to 11 years. It is very simple. The survey will obtain a urine sample from students, a few drops of blood through a finger prick, and administering a short questionnaire. All tests will be undertaken by a trained team from the Ministry of Health under the supervision of a registered nurse. Now remember, this is only a survey. St. Lucia currently has no issues with schistosomiasis or bilharzia. However, we need the support of communities, teachers, parents, and their students. Partner with the Ministry of Health and support the survey from April 24th and help protect the health of this generation and future generations. A message brought to you by the Ministry of Health in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the Pan American Health Organization.
Hello there, welcome back. The closing moments of our program, but there is still time for a call or two. And remember, we are streaming live at www.stluciafirst, that's ST, LUCIAFIRST, stluciafirst.com. So we look forward to hearing from you. It would be nice to hear from a mother who's lost her loved one. It would be so great if we could get some mother to call. It would be very nice. The Red Light Project, what's that really?
One of the things United and Strong, we're a lot more about action. We know there's been so much talk, and I think so often you've had women who've been murdered in this country, sexually violated, rapes, and the marches happen, and people march around the place and whatever, and then it gets quiet. I recall that the Prime Minister before said that it seemed there was a serial rapist on the list, and I believe that you had more women coming forward. I don't think that rapes had increased. I think that women were coming more forward, thinking that the police was doing a better job in terms of trying to deal with this thing. And so what United and Strong thought that instead of all the conversations and talks on media, we needed to have some actions. And so the Red Light Project really and truly focused on women who were not members of the organization. So they're not LGBT persons. They're women who are mothers, who are young people, who live in various walks of life, and they're from different parts of St. Lucia, that we wanted to at least start this pilot project where we have 10 young women who've been trained in a number of areas. So we actually giving them skills to assist them. So one of the things we've been doing, one of the first things we dealt with was sexual reproductive health. Actually training them and educating them about their health, and training them to be educators to help other women who may have sexual reproductive health issues in itself. That's one of the first things that we did. The second thing that we did was, like we're doing for our young men, is a security training. With Carnival and all those issues, and these women are going out, they may go out by themselves, they may go out with a friend or not. We assisted them in developing the security plans for when they go out, when they're entering their homes, when they're going to work, when they're coming from work. So they worked on the security plans for their personal security and also their health security plans in itself. That was the third component. The third component, and we had an instructor, Andrew Murray, a very young and talented martial arts instructor. And we spent 4 days with these women, teaching them realistic self-defense over a 4-day period in itself, and giving them some hardcore skills that they could use in situations. So there's everything from being attacked while you're on the ground to being attacked while you're still standing, and how to run away, how to seek help. 4 days, we were hoping to expand it in the next cycle, but we believe that those were hard skills that women needed. What we're doing next with them really and truly is to getting them involved in voluntary counseling and psychosocial support. A lot of times, the child or the children may be going from psychological trauma, and we're going to be training them to be able to assist and work with the children and work with their friends in offering that sort of counseling and support and itself. So we believe in giving people realistic skills. United and Strong is focused a lot on working with other populations, not just members of the LGBT population, but reaching out to other community members, reaching out to other community groups that need the assistance, as opposed to just talking, but actually putting some action into play and giving people skills that could save their lives and make their lives better.
Are there any other projects that...
Yes, one of the critical ones we're doing currently is we're focusing a bit on the population themselves, the MSM population, young men. One of the key things we found is that young men don't go to the medical clinics, period. They don't really like the atmosphere. I mean, you're a young gay man. The situation has gotten a lot better at the STI clinic. We've been working with the STI clinic and the nurses and the doctors at the STI clinic. Past Dr. Gomez, we've worked with Dr. Duve, who was there before. With Nurse Wilson, Nurse Steeble. So we're working with the staff in ensuring a better environment for our members. This project is aimed at training these young men to be HIV counselors in itself. Also, we're training them to be HIV rapid testers. So we would be starting a clinic at the office where these young men themselves will be engaging in conducting counseling and HIV rapid testing on other young persons who want those services at the end of the day, to make a service that is in a safe environment and a service that is conducive for those young men. We're also focused a lot on doing what we call the productivity enhancement training. It's a project we started last year where we want young people. Already the job market is very difficult. It's because either a very low level of education or these young people are not employable. So the productivity enhancement training is a module we borrowed from the National Skills Development Center, and we're training these young men in how to write curriculum vitae properly, how to do video resumes, how to pass an interview, and after that, what we're doing, we're attaching them to LGBT-friendly places to get some level of internship. In the past, we've partnered with the Bureau of Health Education, where one of our members stayed there for 60 hours to learn from the educators. We've partnered with the St. Lucia Red Cross, the St. Lucia Crisis Center. So they've been very open in working with us, and we hope that we could get some more persons to work with us in terms of partnering and getting these young persons into where they can get some skills.
I have a question for you here. Christian orthodoxy frowns on the LGBT lifestyle.
Yes.
How does United and Strong cope with the stories when you hear people are always apt to give you stories of Sodom and Gomorrah and that fire, brimstone, and hell images that are usually cited? I'm quite sure that must be a very common occurrence.
Yes, yeah. One of the things we see, a phrase we use a lot, well, I like to use it a lot. People are dumb. The person is who you want to reach. You get a group of maybe Christian extremists, persons who believe that, whatever you do, you're going to go to hell. And it's unless you don't stay at your home every day and pray and go to church, anything that deviates from that, you're going to burn in the fires of hell in itself. You get them on an individual basis. A lot of times the conversation is a lot different at the end of the day. And we say, are you a Christian? And if you're in the true sense of the word, you're a Christian, what does that mean to be a Christian? And we leave it up to them to explain what it is to be a Christian. And how, if you follow Jesus Christ, is that the person that you believe in, show me some of the examples where Jesus did everything that he did in terms as a Christian. And what is it that you're doing differently from what Jesus Christ has preached, if you believe in Jesus Christ? And what is it that you're doing differently? And would you still consider yourself to be a Christian? And we leave it for the person to reflect on those things. We've been challenged by pastors to debate issues of Christianity and the issues of morality and those sort of things. But we say also, at the end of the day, if you believe that every individual has a right to live a life free from violence, free from any form of discrimination, at the end of the day. And you're willing to work with people so that they can practice their faith at the end of the day. This is what we're asking for. Because if you're about harvesting souls, but I can't enter the church until I am washed and cleansed, then I don't understand the concept. At the end of the day, it becomes a very confusing concept as to what Christianity is, or persons who claim to be Christians. We have a very radical Pope who's turning a lot of heads, and people are saying this guy must be really crazy. Speaking about acceptance of Lgbt and looking at the issues of abortion and accepting the fact that there may be times when abortion is should be done. So we like to tell people that if you're going to say you're a Christian, the very Bible you say that condemns homosexuality is in the same Bible that says something else in terms of being a good Christian and accepting people. So you need to determine where you fall at the end of the day.
So you all are able to, in a nutshell,
Yeah.
cope. You all are used to it. You're able to cope with it.
Yeah, after a while, I think there's a level of hypocrisy in terms of that.
If I were to ask you as we close, what has been the most surprising feature of your job at United and Strong? Something that has really surprised you and shocked you like crazy.
Right.
What would that be?
I think one of the things that has surprised me and maybe shocked me as crazy is that people try to determine what my sexual orientation is. People believe that your sexual orientation strangely has a lot to do with the job that you have. And even members of the community, when they first met me, is like, do you go bi? Are you heterosexual? Where do you fall?
They ask you that.
Yeah, people think that based on where you work, based on I working at United and Strong, has to do with my sexual orientation. And that worries me, that our jobs, your sexual orientation determines the job that you have. And I was very surprised at that. I'm like,
So what does that say about us, the people?
It says that we this myopic view, we have this myopic view. The same way we believe that men should do certain things and women should do certain things. Sadly, I believe that my sexuality is nobody's business at the end of the day. There are persons who know my sexual orientation, but it should not determine where I earn my daily bread and the work that I do at the end of the day. People ask my daughter, who's 14 years old, that. That was one of the biggest things also. She came to, Daddy, people ask me if you're gay. My daughter is 14 years and she has a mouth like a mother. And she said, no, it doesn't matter what my father, he's just fights for the rights of gay people.
Good.
That's her thing, And that was very shocking. They would not ask me.
But they would ask
but they would ask my daughter. Close friends of mine would ask my daughter. But like I think she could stand on her own. And that's the way it is, and I would continue assisting United and Strong, whether it be as a staff or a volunteer at the end of the day.
One of the things that comes up quite regularly, I meet a lot of people, all different types of people. And one of the things that really comes up, and it comes up so regularly, that sometimes friends say to me that they are not able to cope with some of the things that are said about them or some of the speculation surrounding them. And rather than people coming to you directly and asking a question, they look for your friends and other associates to get the responses.
Yes.
And sometimes they because of maybe the kind of person that you are, you're probably strong and you have a mind of your own. So they look for the weak links in the chain.
Yes.
And that is something that is said to me quite regularly when speaking to a lot of people. And I do not know why people do that. They're just always looking to find out information from other sources.
Yes.
If you really want to find out something, deal with it directly.
Precisely.
With whoever it is that you want to find out whatever about.
Right.
But they rely on
the other sources.
Which is very strange.
Which is the same thing when it comes to, we also work with persons who are HIV positive. And sometimes knowing that I was in the field of HIV education, which I still am, and persons would see you walking with this person, they would either say, oh, this person gay or do they have HIV? You know, weird, because you associate with a program that focuses on that. They believe that if you're walking with someone who's gay, if you're walking with someone, that person is either gay or this person may have some form of STI, or that person has HIV. And even some of the nurses, when I do community education with them, they fall in that same category. People ask them, okay, since you're in HIV education, do you have HIV or the person? And so the ignorance is still there, you know, at the end of the day. But I tell people, you know, don't be afraid to be unique and different. It's what makes you who you are and what makes us who we are as St. Lucian, because we're very different, we're very unique. I use the background of being from a mixed ethnic background. I'm East Indian and I'm black. It's the best of both worlds. So I feel very comfortable with that.
Yeah. Closing thoughts.
United and Strong is an organization that will never get tired. We will continue ensuring that we represent the interest of LGBT members and persons who are different. We look forward to engaging the government, speaking on issues of good governance with the government, where the government becomes a bit more open to listening to the issues faced by United and Strong, and where government can one day actually stand up and say, we stand next to United and Strong and we accept the work that we're doing as an organization, and we think that they're an amazing organization. So we have a meeting coming up with the Honorable Sarah Flood Bobrand, and we do hope that out of this meeting we can get some very positive feedback from her. But like I said, we shall not tire, and we shall never go quietly into the night as an organization. We will always be there. And we love the support we get on a daily basis from young people and from the other supporters we have in St. Lucia, and we would like to thank you.
Well, in my very humble view, your entity, United and Strong, should be very privileged and honored to have someone like you.
Thanks.
Really, I think you're doing a wonderful, wonderful job. So I would like to thank you, Bennett Charles, Communications and Advocacy Officer of United and Strong Incorporated. I want to take the opportunity to thank our lone caller, but I suspect that we had a lot of people viewing tonight and taking in every word that came from you. So I want to thank you for that. This program is going to be rebroadcast on Sunday at the same time, 8:30, and on Wednesday, that's next Wednesday, right after the 6 a.m. news. Wednesday, right after the 6 o'clock morning news. And so, thank you very much, Randall. Thank you very much, Bernard, and the folks upstairs. This is David Samuel speaking. This meeting is adjourned.